Okay, welcome back, everyone. And thanks for joining us again today. Today we have Peter LittleJohn Cook with us, and he will be sharing some insights and wisdoms about integration after awakening. And I know Peter's here, he'll hop in a second. In the meantime, we're hanging on. Maybe taking a moment to get grounded and settled. Perhaps also if there are any questions or concerns or anything from yesterday that's come up, insights, kind of like get organized, write them down so we can perhaps answer any outstanding questions that anyone has today. And we spoke about how all the practices we've been doing are practices that are integrative practices, which is why we called this retreat Kundalini integration, because all these practices are tools that assist with integrating the movement of this energy. Peter, are you there? We are waiting for you.
Yes. Hello.
Welcome. Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see. How do you pronounce your name? Keela? Keela and Ula. Good to see you.
Yes, Keela. Yep.
Thanks. Nice to see you both. Okay. Um, so is there did you want to say anything before I come in, Susie?
Not at all. The floor is yours if you want to just maybe introduce yourself and then please share whatever you have prepared for us today.
Okay. All right. Well, what I could say about myself, I've been working with meditation, yoga, tantra, over the years, several healing modalities, different forms of energy work, and developed a familiarity with the yoga tradition, the tantra tradition, and the energy work, let's say the inner aspects of yoga that relate to Kundalini, which has led to people seeking me out for help also with Kundalini awakening related issues. And so this theme of Kundalini clarity, I have things that I can share with you in general terms of what the challenges are, what people go through, what the misunderstandings around the theme of Kundalini are. But I would love to, rather than give just a presentation, I would love to address really specifically what brings you here, what questions you may have, what experiences that you have that have brought up questions, challenges, and so that this can be most meaningful to you. So if there are any questions, whether they're, let's say, personal questions relating to your path or general questions, I understood your therapists, and so perhaps in your therapeutic practice, the theme has come up. So I'm happy to begin with that connection with you to see what would be most useful for you. And if there aren't any questions immediately, we can also do a little introductory meditation. I know you've been doing some yoga with Susie, so it'll be another practice. And it's possible that after that practice, that something will come up, something will present itself as a reflection, and also we can, let's say, unfold the conversation here from the practice itself, because a lot of what I have to share with you about Kundalini is related to the practice that I share, which I call grace flow. So if there aren't any questions right now, then we can do the practice together. Okay. So I invite you to bring your awareness to the breath. Bring your awareness to the body. And especially bringing your awareness to where you're feeling your body supported by the earth element. So the place where your body is in contact with the ground, the mattress, cushion, floor, whatever you're in touch with, and just feeling that sense of support. Letting yourself drop into it and enjoy that sense of support. Perhaps softening the body a little as you notice the support and settle into it, but also finding, at the same time as you may relax into the feeling of being supported, finding an inner impulse that draws you upward, the inner life force expressing itself as structure, as upwardness, like the impulse a plant has, a flower has, moving in the direction of the light, in the direction of the sun. Something like that expressing itself in us as an upwardness. And so letting that be there at the same time as a relaxation and a settling happens. Feeling the connection with the earth element. And allowing the breath to be open and loose. Allowing the voice to be available. So maybe a sigh arises, maybe a yawn or a stretch, letting any of these expressions of the body's intelligence arise uninhibitedly. Again, that awareness of the connection with earth, whether it's your feet touching the ground, your legs, your buttocks, your back, maybe your hands in your lap, whatever feels supported, bringing attention to that sensation. Letting yourself really settle into the feeling of support. And then you can allow your attention, your awareness to expand a little deeper into the connection with earth, allowing yourself to feel in connection with the field of earth's intelligence, nature's intelligence, the greater field of aliveness, prana, chi, but with a sense of rootedness, energetic rootedness here. So you may feel an expansion but also allow yourself to feel that rootedness in and through the body here. Allowing yourself to feel also that aliveness that you're in touch with in the field of earth, to be an aliveness in the body. It may be that you're visual, sensitive to energy, you may feel sensations and you may not, and either is absolutely fine. Just allowing yourself to be open to the sense of aliveness. Perhaps even inviting a sense of radiant brightness arising from within, emanating. And you can allow it to be centered, emanating from the heart space. And if you like, you can place a hand on your chest, bringing attention especially to that place that we associate with our center, a place we associate with love, gratitude, joy, courage, compassion, kindness. And we can rest in this heart space with our attention, allowing the energy of the smile to arise. Also an emanation of the quality of aliveness, an aliveness that feels joyful, an aliveness you can enjoy. And if you like, you can let this inner radiance feel warm, graceful like the rising sun, both potent and gentle. Filling the inner space and even overflowing, radiating beyond the skin. Emanating into the space that surrounds you. And staying at the same time with the sense of rootedness, the connection with the earth element. Combining the sense of expansion that arises with the rootedness, presence. And we're creating space for whatever may arise within. We're focusing on what we could call positive sensations, the heart qualities, the energy of the smile, light. But also we're giving space for whatever needs to come into awareness or needs to be held in this moment. And feel free to move, whether it's gentle, subtle movements, stretching, or standing and moving the body, letting whatever the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of the life force asks, desires, letting energy flow uninhibitedly. Letting the body be both rooted energetically and light, like a tree that sways in the wind. And we can bring awareness also to the space that is referred to as the third eye, letting attention rise into the, can be the center of the head, placed between the eyebrows, wherever your attention flows naturally when I speak of the third eye. See just where it settles and enjoy that space. Just rest there, not trying to achieve anything or trying to get it right, just resting wherever the attention settles. And you can very gently raise the eyebrows. Again, with the energy of the smile, softening the face, letting that sense of inner radiance express itself also through the face. You don't have to do anything, just let it arise, let it happen. Remembering to let the breath be open and soft, the voice available. And without any hurry, soon we'll be inviting you to open your eyes. But I want to also invite you to allow for, when you do bring your attention to the senses, to relate with what you see, touch, as if it is filled with the same light, energy, heart quality, grace that we're allowing to arise from within, to reveal itself. So it can be recognized in all things, all expressions. And when you do open your eyes at any moment, you feel like it's allowing yourself to perhaps see with a new openness, curiosity to what might not normally be revealed. Hmm. If there is anything that arises that you'd like to share, whether it's just even if it's just a word or two, to express what's arising in this moment, feel free to share. Or if any questions have arisen, observations, reflections, feel free to share.
Okay. I would say, connectedness, you would do the same, and just vibrant light, illuminating light. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Connectedness, light. Yeah.
And I will share, just noticing, I mean, today is, I'm getting ready to go into a heavy work schedule. And so I'm noticing the energy from being kind of angst up from that a little bit. And when you were just leading through and talking about just that smile and allowing that to release, I literally like felt like a hook or a string, like pull my one side of my mouth up. It was like the most interesting thing. Like it was just, yeah, it was interesting.
Thanks for sharing.
I had a similar experience in that I have a lot of interpersonal conflicts going on. And, uh, there's like a heaviness, a coldness. But as you were bringing us into that place of warmth and guiding that hope and that gratitude, it was like a swirling happening. Um, And so if I was to put a word to it, it almost felt like it started to balance and then there was more light energy. Um, but for a while I was feeling like a sensation of coldness and then a swirling. So that's what I have to share.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thanks, Ula. Okay. Okay. And have any questions arisen? Any curiosities? Okay. So feel free to share any that arise. Don't feel you're interrupting if they arise while I'm speaking.
Yeah,
Ula, did you
so
want to say something?
I have a like yesterday and today, there's like a pain I get in the back, but then as I'm doing the breath and really being guided, I find that like I pay attention to it, I notice it, and then eventually it starts to release and go away, but then it'll come back. Um, but like even now after that meditation, I don't feel it now, but for a while I was feeling it and it was really uncomfortable. I don't know what it's about, just like right in that area.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Um, so that's perhaps a good place to start speaking of Kundalini and the kind of challenges that can arise. Um, the way that Kundalini is usually spoken of is as an energy that arises from the base of the spine and, when awoken, rises up through the spine or through an energetic channel, the central nadi, or what referred to as, let's say, meridians in Chinese medicine and in the yogic and tantric tradition as nadis. So I also want to refer to what was said about feeling balance arising. When we focus on, there are several ways to create balance, and one of them is by focusing on the third eye, which is why it arises so much in so many practices. You're probably familiar with images of the energy body, which show two lines that cross over each other rising up the spine. And in fact, this same image you see in the representation of, you could say, the logo of medicine, the caduceus, which goes back to ancient times. You find it in Egypt, you find it in other ancient Mesopotamian cultures, and you find it in India. And one way to understand the importance of this symbol is that it represents the core polarities of energy that exist in all of existence, all of creation, let's say, and within the body. So we can think of these polarities, we can represent them, let's say, we can see them as occurring within the life dynamics of masculine and feminine, giving birth to continuity of life. Symbolically as heaven and earth giving birth to life in the kind of language of the ancients, the idea that the heavens fertilize the earth, and light and dark, left and right, up and down, all the polarities are expressed symbolically in this image. And there is the central channel where, when these two energies are brought into balance and even a kind of stillness, a kind of neutralization, so that you could say there is no need for them to flow either here or here. They're just kind of they're brought into stillness. But energy, rather than becoming totally still, rises up through the central channel. This is you can almost say the story and the visual representation. And to a great extent, you could say this is a reasonably good explanation of what happens energetically in the body. You can think of it in terms of deactivating the sympathetic nervous system. You can think of it in terms of bringing calmness to the plexuses of nerves that are in the body, found all the way down from the pelvic plexuses of nerves up to the third eye. So the third eye, symbolically and in some ways, let's say literally, biologically, this area is a place where the dualities, the currents, are found in a place of non-duality, no distinction, no separation between self and other, a place of timelessness. when we're in activity, we tend to be, let's say, pumping out energy for reacting, responding to challenges, to a sense of what needs to be done, usually with some, let's say, projected purpose, some future outcome we're looking to achieve. And so energy is unsettled in the sense of that we're trying to get somewhere or get something achieved. We can also habitually carry some tension, some you could say some beliefs or attitudes that may not be fully conscious, but that tend to be part of our way of interacting with the world, our way of seeing the world, our way of seeing ourselves. And so these can become energetic configurations. You know, one person would say it's our personality, our habits. You could also think of it as a kind of energetic configuration that goes along with that. And that can involve day-to-day, even feeling some degree of discomfort and pain associated with that habitual way of, let's say, holding ourselves, relating, of trying to be in the world in a certain way. And so what can seem to be, could easily interpret it to be even a physiological problem. Like, I have this pain, I must have something wrong with my back. You know, we could naturally interpret it in this way. And then we find that when we do a meditation or some other practice, oh, it's gone. It's not actually a permanent physical thing that is truly there and needs to be somehow fixed. It comes and it goes, and it comes according to what state we're in, and goes according to what state we're in. And yet it can be persistent because it's associated with our habitual way of being. And so as long as that habitual, familiar way of being is there, we have that sensation arising. The word karma is used in ways that tend to be confusing and unhelpful, I think. But we can think of karma as really meaning the tendencies of how energy is flowing or how energy is configured. It's the patterns that have been established. We could call it, in less mystical terms, conditioning. One reason that Kundalini is being given such importance in the yogic tradition and the tantric tradition is the idea that there is this divine potential. There's something that can happen when we have a kind of spiritual awakening, when we're touched by a divine awakening of some kind, a realization, a shift in our state of consciousness. Something can happen that is not just an experience, but the beginning of a process, an unfolding. So you could think of it as beginning with an experience, sometimes a very specific one that we can put our fingers on and say, yeah, this happened at this time because, and we can even have a whole story of why it happened. But sometimes there is just an unfolding that arises with no obvious reason for it. At least not that we can pinpoint what was happening in that moment that caused it. But an unfolding can start to happen that can have physiological sensations associated with it, changes in body temperature, emotional changes, changes in how our mind or our attention works, changes that can be pleasant or frightening. So the kinds of changes are infinite possibilities, according to what's happening with the person. But more commonly, people speak of sensations in the spine, temperature changes, sense of pressure in the spine, for example. And the reason that Kundalini is given such importance and is seen as actually not just energy, but as a manifestation of the divine itself, as Shakti, as the divine in its feminine aspect. You could say divine potency, divine power, divine potentiality, the life force in its unconditioned potentiality. This sort of primordial life force. And the potency of this life force allows for a repatterning as it flows, a dissolving of the patterns that have arisen, a dissolving of the conditioning that has established itself. I mentioned that karma can be thought of as conditioning. We can think of our habitual states as being physiologically expressed as neural pathways, biochemical states, configurations of different neurotransmitters, hormones. These are all patterns which can change through this energetic awakening. We find ourselves in different feeling states. Our attention is in a different place, you could say. And as our attention is in a different place, our whole being is in a different state. It could even be said that, at least this could be said for many of the yogic traditions, that their whole purpose was to create the conditions for this energy flow. There is a phrase from the ancient texts that says, Kundalini Shakti is Guru. So even while these traditions gave such importance, tremendous importance to lineage and to spiritual master, guru, an embodied teacher, they also affirmed that the energy itself is Guru. So the idea is that there is the divine guiding us within this awakened energy, and that the energy knows what to do, it knows where to go. And within the tantric tradition, you find imagery of, as I mentioned before, in relation to the two complementary energies, the polarities. You have the representation of the divine as masculine and as feminine, as Shiva and as Shakti. Modern Tantra tends to focus on, let's say, the humanization, the anthropomorphization, is that the word, of these archetypes, taking it to mean something about our relationship with our partner, something relating to sacred sexuality and embodying, let's say, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. And all that has some truth to it, but it also tends to obscure a whole other dimension of this, which is that Shiva represents absolute stillness. In some forms, Shiva is represented as dancing. It's one of the famous images we see of Shiva, is Shiva Nataraj, in which he represents the three forces or activities of the divine: creation and the sustenance and the dissolution. The three aspects that people associate with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But in that particular form, he's representing those three divine principles, let's say, or divine actions. The totality of reality, let's say, the arising of things, the sustaining of them, or the existence we see around us, that moment in which things seem to exist, and the dissolution. But other than Shiva Nataraj, it is very common to see Shiva represented with his eyes closed, or at least in seated position, as the kind of archetypal yogi, the image of, let's say, a meditating yogi, a renunciant, and often represented as, and his story also, when represented, as a sort of mythological figure, the story has all sorts of clues. He resides at the peak of the highest mountains, or the peak of the highest mountain. So symbolically, he's here, right? We think of the body as the earth. He's at the highest peak. There is no higher place than where Shiva is. And it's a place of absolute stillness, of restfulness. It's meditation itself that is represented, but not meditation as an activity, but the state of consciousness that we call meditation, that is unconditioned consciousness. Consciousness free from, let's say, identity or stories or attachments, just pure consciousness. So Shiva is that, is consciousness, unconditioned. You could also think of it as absolute spaciousness, the spaciousness of consciousness without contents and the busyness of mind. Mind tends to be holding on to this or that, doing this or that, but consciousness in this context is just the spaciousness of existence, of beingness. So that is Shiva. And Shakti is, you could say, the other side of the coin of reality, of existence. It is activity. So it's stillness is Shiva, and activity, action, creation, or the unfolding, the divine potency, the divine potential for creation, and that which comes into creation, that which actually exists, not just space, right? But that which actually arises, the universe, all that arises in some sense is actually Shakti. Shakti is the potential energy, the creative energy, but also that which comes into form. So also you may be familiar, certainly, with through yogic practices, that the chakras are associated with the elements. And in some sense, you could say the chakras are associated with the process of creation. the arising from potentiality into materiality, into form. So you go from the subtlest, you go from a place of pure potentiality without form, associated with the crown, to this place at the third eye, where there is a, let's say, a union of all principles, the beginnings of something. But still nothing that is really form. And then you start to have the elements themselves, beginning with the throat chakra, ether, represented here. And at the heart, air. And in the solar plexus or the manipura, associated with the belly button, the navel, you've got fire. And in the second chakra, you have water. And then the last, usually people speak of it as the first chakra, right? But in this, from this perspective, it's the last of the unfolding. It's earth. It's the final unfolding. In some sense, the apparent settling into stillness of Shakti, of prana, of energy, into what we see as solidity, feel as solidity, the earth element. And that is where Kundalini is said to rest, to in some sense be waiting for reawakening, for a return. And so symbolically, you have the divine couple, Shiva and Shakti. And Shakti knows the way back to Shiva and returns to Shiva when awakened, put it another way, when allowed, when permitted through the state that we cultivate, the energetic balance that we cultivate, energy naturally flows back to Shiva, which is a way to say that we go from a sense of separation, an identification with materiality, time and space, into a communion that is timeless, a wholeness. And it is a process that unfolds naturally. Of course, there are yogic, tantric practices to, let's say, make that happen. But people tend to get stuck with the trying to make it happen. And so that phrase, that Shakti, Kundalini Shakti is Guru, the fact that it knows how to flow, it knows where to flow, it naturally flows back to Shiva. This is something that tends to be forgotten in all the practices. And this is why in the practice that we did together, there is, let's say, space created, an opportunity created through settling, opening, allowing, enjoying, creating space for energy to flow, creating an availability for something very natural to happen by itself. There can be imagery used. There's some degree of intentionality in the guided process, but most of all, it's just an invitation to allow, to be available, to not interfere with something natural, and to be restful enough for it to unfold. To be to be feeling safe enough also for what can unfold. You know, we begin with the sense of connection with Earth, the feeling, the physical feeling of being supported. And it can seem like so little, right? We're just like, we're already sitting down and we're just bringing awareness to the fact that we're sitting down. How minimalist could we get in terms of what we're doing, right? We're just noticing. But in that noticing, there can be also some relaxation that happens. Because we might go from some mental activity, some preoccupation, some degree of stress that we're carrying from our activities and from past experiences. And we come to just feel the body supported. For a moment, the sense of supportedness gives us some degree of comfort, because you could say that it resonates with different dimensions of supportedness. We're attending to just the body, the physical body, but what does it feel like to be held and supported? It feels like safety. It feels like being cared for. And so in that moment, with just that simple thing of, okay, my body is supported, it opens a little portal for the possibility of feeling a little safer, feeling able to settle right now, because it's a safe moment, a safe space. And that really is a tremendous key, because until there is some degree of feeling safe, we're going to be unsettled. We're going to be trying to fix things, trying to get somewhere else that we idealize as better or more right than this moment. So the moment that we start to just feel safe right now, that's where this natural flow can happen. Any questions, any sharing, any reflections?
If there are no questions, I'd like to contribute. I feel like it'd be nice to summarize what you've said so far. Well, according to how I understood it, and maybe perhaps this will help others as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
So I think part of what you were saying was that it's okay to hold both the light and the dark together. And that kind of reminded me of something that Mariana Kaplan had said, saying yes to the no. And I think we covered that in our yoga training at some point. So in the negative, there's usually something that's positive. So like embracing that, basically. And this is when you were talking about what was it? It was the beginning of the talk, actually. And then the second thing that I got was that the karma. For some reason, as you were talking, I was thinking about like input equals output. What you put in, you get out, as far as karma is. And that it's all, actually, it goes down to choices. So like karma is really ingrained in the choice that we make. Depends on like that choice in that moment. And sometimes it's hard to see what the end result of that choice is going to be, but we just make it anyway. So there's like an element of like throwing the dice and taking a risk and see what transpires, basically. I don't know. And then the third thing that I got was that create the so like basically allowing yourself to feel what needs to happen, as opposed to like running away from those sensations and trying to numb them and trying to suppress them or hold them back or avoid them. And creating the space for the energy to flow, basically creating the safe space, because safety was like a key word here. And sometimes it's really hard to do that, right? Like it's not the easiest thing to feel safe where we are. Anyway, so I just thought I'd offer that in like a concise summary for everyone.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Yeah.
I just, yeah, I was thinking about even just the, you bring it up about the karma. And I think we throw a lot of negative energy into karma, right? That's usually how I think it gets used, at least in, this world that we're in right now. And so I love just that, kind of just rethinking that and thinking about, yeah, just karma sometimes is just that unfolding of, and I think about that safety part, like when we think about a core need, that individuals have. And so part of it's that awareness of allowing our energy or not making sure, but just being aware of, are we safe, and are we placing ourselves in those safe spaces, and how can we feed that. And I think the other big thing that kind of came up to me was, because I remember, when you kind of helped when we were doing the yoga teacher training, Brickell and I were part of that too. But just that part of where you said, like, Shakti knows how to get back to Shiva. Like that was like, huh, that was, and so to me, I think about that energy and just being aware of the blockages that may be there that aren't allowing maybe some of that flow, that it's there, it's built in. That's just my kind of way to throw in. Is there anything else?
And that's kind of what I was wondering, and connecting that to, you had used the word conditioning in reference to karma. And so like Kila was saying, that blockage, or like Susie was referring to, like numbing out, conditioning. Like when I hear that, I think like even from like things in childhood that might or be repetitive patterns, or things that, we might do but aren't necessarily totally conscious of it, just kind of unconsciously doing something repetitively. But once we recognize it, then that reminds me of the word choice was put out there. Like then you have choices to make a choice at that point. So that's like kind of some connections I was making too.
Yeah, I'd like to reflect back on some of the what you've shared in the summary and the other reflections. So in relation to karma, the word itself is related to, it can be translated as action, right? So it refers to the consequences of action. It refers to the chain of events, of actions, the cumulative events. You could say it refers to everything that's led up to this moment. It's when people say, oh, well, it's your karma, it's a way of saying, well, you've walked to this point. You know, you've taken every step that brings you exactly here. And the when we speak of childhood experiences, patterns that are established, also we're referring in these cases to you could say undigested experiences, things that they happened, but in some sense they're still here, they're still happening in some way. They're still present in some sense. They're still influencing what we're experiencing now, shaping it in some way, coloring it in some way, spilling into what we're doing or feeling, or the way that we're seeing the world right now. So it's undigested experience that's with us. And connecting a few of the dots here, the allowing for the darkness, the one way that I referred to that was really in the meditation itself, you know, when saying that we're creating positive imagery, you could call it, and the energy of the smile, positive feelings. But it's not to override anything else, but to create space for everything. Because it's possible to use positive thinking and positive imagery to kind of override, you know, to sort of run away from other things. But it's also possible to use it with a sense of openness. I'm going to cultivate openness to allow for integration, to digest whatever's there. So it's a way to very powerfully release karma, right? To create the space for what's previously undigested, to have finally time to be seen and felt, and not to be struggled with, because we feel safe, right? In that moment that we feel safe, we can look at what was before perhaps too painful, or we were just too busy even, right? We keep ourselves very busy. So some things are not yet processed because they're painful, frightening, overwhelming, and some things it's just a matter of not giving time. You know, we did a lot of things and experienced a lot of things, and then we didn't rest enough. We just went to bed at the end of the day, exhausted, dreamed, you know, still busy processing, and then we accumulate more the next day, and it builds up a lot of unprocessed experiences and feelings. And so one function of meditation, we might think of it as like you're supposed to still your mind, but again, that makes it sometimes a busyness that we're engaging with, and an attempt at getting something right. But you can think of it as just creating space, you know, giving an opportunity for stillness to arise, not by being forced, not by being what you're supposed to do, but by being an opportunity you're creating for what was in the way of stillness, in the way of peace, to unfold and to be processed. You know, and I'm using this term digestion because it's natural, organic thing that you don't actively need to do. You need to not interfere with it, right? By being too busy, active. And so it's in the same way, karma itself, you could say, naturally gets processed, digested. In other words, our past doesn't need to be overflowing into the present. Wounds naturally heal, you know, and past experiences naturally get processed, but we need to give them space. We need to give them attention. We need to have the space and the sense of safety to give them that attention and space. And this allows energy to flow, and this allows for consciousness to expand, and this allows for Shakti to unite with Shiva, which is a way to refer to an energetic current that is established, and also to as a reference to the feeling, the blissful feeling associated with this union of Shiva and Shakti, represented, let's say, as a sexual union, partly because of the potency of that image, the reuniting of the polarities, the making one out of something that has in some way split. But it also is a way to describe the blissful quality associated with this flow of energy. I think there may have been one or two other things that I was going to touch on from what you'd shared. But it feels like a natural place to pause. Any other reflections? Anything that's come up in this last bit?
Perhaps we can offer a little break.
Yeah, it's a good moment for that. Yeah.
5 minutes is good, or does anyone want more? Okay, let's resume in 5 minutes then.
All right.
I kind of lost track of time, but I think it's been 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
One will be returning shortly.
Something I remember that I wanted to also reflect on. Susie, you said that it can be difficult sometimes for us to feel that safety, that there are conditions, places, situations where it's difficult to access that feeling of safety. And certainly there are situations in which we may be physically unsafe, and but very often what happens is that we carry the feeling of unsafety with us rather than it really being a condition that we're faced with as a threat in the world around us. It can become a chronic feeling. It can be a way that we relate to the world, and it's easy for that to happen because we're brought up really, if not explicitly stated, it's implicit that the world isn't safe, that life is a battle, that you have to struggle. Life is a struggle and you have to struggle to survive and to get ahead. The whole way that we're taught to relate to life is to not feel that it's safe to just relax, that you have to be wary, you have to kind of have your armor on. We're trained to be vigilant and to take to kind of presuppose that life isn't safe. And I'd go as far as saying that we have this weird situation where it's like each generation takes it on themselves to pass fear on to the next generation. It's like a parent or a school or a family, whatever, they won't feel their job is done unless they see that the kids that they're responsible for feel some degree of fear. It sounds really weird, perhaps, when it's put so directly, but what I'm talking of is that if they feel comfortable, people think something's wrong. They're going to be too careless, right? Too carefree. They're going to be irresponsible because they're not afraid. And so education, formal education, family dynamics, it's become just part of how kids are nurtured, that instilling in a certain amount of restlessness in them is taken to be part of the educational process. We've got words like when someone is just carefree, they're thought of as a fool, right? Like they don't know what's going on. It's assumed that someone who is actually just free of worries, they can't see what the world's really like. They're foolish. And in the tarot, where certain wisdom teachings were kind of embedded in the imagery, in the archetypes, the fool is this figure that is carefree, in some sense pure of heart, unconditioned, but also potentially about to step off a cliff and about to be eaten by crocodiles. It's kind of free and at the same time, you'd say unaware. And so what our education has probably not done is given us tools to be cultivating a sense of safety, a sense of trust or faith, combined with a groundedness and a sensitivity to what is actually happening around us. Because faith can be a way to pretend that everything is okay, just as positive thinking can be a way to disconnect from what we're feeling. Positive imagery, positive thinking, it can be a way to postpone actually processing and digesting anything by just focusing on what makes us temporarily feel less less pain, less anxiety. So the trick is to combine the sense of safety, the faith, you could say, or the trust, with the rootedness, the sensitivity, the openness to what is happening right now. So we have a true reading of the present. And so much of spirituality speaks of presence, being in the present moment. Like the Holy Grail is here. And it's such a weird thing, isn't it, that we seek what's here. But it's the fact that we don't feel safe that leads us to feel disconnected from here and seeking something. You know, we're seeking the sense of safety, the sense of wholeness. So of course, if we don't feel it, then we don't feel present. Because there's some sense that there's something wrong in the present. And so we're in the process of trying to make it right and idealizing the right moment in the future, in some other condition. So it can be perhaps the most difficult thing about coming back to safety is remembering to do it. Because, of course, like I said, there are moments where we may be physically endangered. And then it's not the moment to kind of close your eyes and do a practice. It's a moment to move out of danger, right? But so, as I said, so much of the time we're just carrying that restlessness with us. And so it is, when that's the case, it's a matter of remembering to reorient our attention, to give ourselves an opportunity to reconfigure, to settle, to find the restfulness, the connection with earth. And it doesn't have to be done by closing your eyes and sitting still. We can establish a sense of connectedness with our eyes open, in movement. And there are ways, and I'll share a short practice also in a moment. There are ways that we can help to go out of a state of restlessness and anxiety and you could say an inner busyness to we can break that pattern for a moment through a quick practice that we can do on the move. And so the challenge, I think, is a lot of the time it's just remembering that we can come back to a sense of safety, that it is a possibility, that we have that option, and remembering to do it, remembering that it's possible and remembering to do it. And when we're feeling restless, it's not easy to remember either of those things. It's very easy to overlook that it's possible. And if we forget that it's possible, we're not going to remember to do it, right? To do whatever action, whatever practice helps us to settle. So one of the advantages of being with us in the retreat that we're doing in Italy in March is to have the opportunity through days of practice to establish a new routine, a new habit. Because if you make a habit of some simple practices, then they become easier to remember, even when we're feeling some degree of restlessness and anxiety. In that moment where it's most difficult to remember, to do what's needed to feel connected again, safe again. If we've made a habit of the practices, then we have them as a tool that is really accessible. it's not just knowing that the technique exists, but turning it into a new habit. Yeah. So any questions or reflections? And then if not, I'll share this little practice. Okay. Susie, I think we've done this before together, the 20 connected breaths.
Yes.
This is used in rebirthing breath work, and the practice can be done in 3 minutes, which I think is one of the most efficient meditations. And one reason that I love this is because we easily convince ourselves that we don't have time. Like, it was just the day was too busy. I couldn't get my practice done today. You know, I was just busy from beginning to end. I just couldn't fit in a practice, because maybe we have a 20-minute, 40-minute, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half practice, right? And so it can happen that things come up, and whatever time we'd put aside for yoga and a longer meditation, it just, you know, that time ended up taken up by something that came up. But a 3-minute practice, can we really tell ourselves we didn't have time? So I even suggest to people, experiment doing this practice 5 times a day. And that sounds, wait a minute, 5 times a day, but it's just 15 minutes total, right? 15 minutes total in your whole day. You could start your day with 3-minute practice before you get out of bed. And then maybe in the middle of the morning, you find another 3 minutes and you can do it again. Maybe in a lunch break, maybe in the middle afternoon, you got a coffee break, whatever, you go for a little walk, or you're sitting at your desk. You don't have to do anything special to fit this in. And then again in the evening, perhaps as you lie in bed, or before you lie down, as you sit in bed, perhaps. But it shouldn't be that difficult if you give it a go to find time, even for 5 moments of practice. But again, it's a matter of remembering, you know. It might take an alarm clock or something to establish the pattern so that you remember. Setting an alarm on your on your phone. So I'll explain the practice, and then we can do it together. It's called 20 connected breaths because we're breathing in a way that we don't let a gap come in between the inhalation and the exhalation. There is a pattern that we repeat in this practice of 4 fast breaths followed by 1 long inhalation and long exhalation. And that pattern is then done again until we reach 20 breaths. So it's, you can think of it this way, 4 plus 1, that's 4 fast breaths and the long deep breath, 4 plus 1, 4 plus 1, 4 plus 1, 4 plus 1, right? Making the 20. It doesn't matter if you lose count when you do this. It's not it's not really the maths that matters. What matters is the combination of faster breathing with this long, relaxing breath. It's the combination of the two that matters, not whether you do the exact 4 fast breaths. And it doesn't matter if you do exactly 4 cycles of that pattern, right? You can lose count of that as well and maybe end up doing just 3, or you do 5. Don't worry about it. Just experiment with it, play with it, and enjoy it. When we do the fast breathing, it's very easy. It's almost inevitable that you don't create any gap when you're accelerating your breath. So where the challenge is actually in the deep breath. We will easily tend to, when we take a deep inhalation, we'll tend to pause at the end of it. And then when we take the long exhalation, we'll tend to pause at the end of that as well before the next breath. So that's where we need to just pay a little bit more attention to how we're breathing in order to really, for it to be connected breathing. It's at the end of the long inhalation and at the end of the long exhalation. And in terms of technique, there's just one more thing that I'll say, which is because it starts with the 4 fast breaths, I suggest that before you do the practice, you let yourself just kind of loosen your body a bit, maybe let a sigh arise, just kind of have the intention of loosening. You know, you might loosen your neck, you might take a deep breath like that, and that will help you to then begin the 20 connected breaths, begin that fast breathing from a slightly more relaxed place than if you just go straight into it. You know, if you are doing it, especially if you're doing it because you're tense, give yourself a moment to physiologically relax a bit, you know, change your posture, release the tension in your body before you go into it, because otherwise the fast breathing can feel a little bit contractive, you know. So if you just let yourself relax a little bit first, just a shift in your body, you know, just kind of loosening your body, one little exhalation, that's already a good starting point. Okay. I don't know how well you'll hear my breath, but I'll demonstrate. I said, so one more thing to explain. I said it was a 3-minute practice, but the 20 breaths that I've described, they only take about half a minute, 40 seconds, depending on how fast you breathe, right? So the reason I'm describing it as a 3-minute practice is because once you do the 20 breaths, it's not actually done, right? After you do those 20 breaths, just let yourself be in a restful state. Just, there's nothing you need to do, but don't occupy yourself with doing anything if you can for those remaining, let's say, 2.5 minutes, you know. But when I do the demonstration now, I'll just be doing the breathing part, right? So this demonstration won't take 3 minutes. It'll be just the 40 seconds or so of the breath. You might be able to see through the movements in my body. You might see me breathing rather than hear me breathing. And sometimes, you see, when you hear the breath, when it's demonstrated, you take it in. Like, even though it's easy to understand, sometimes we get confused when we're doing it. But if we've heard it, if we've kind of heard the rhythm, it can be easier to then do it without getting muddled. So I'll demonstrate. And with that, that initial preparatory breath as well. Any questions? Okay. So if you want to do the practice together, then after this first practice, we could give it just a minute. And then if any questions come from this first go, then it'll just help to clarify, and then we'll do it again with the full 3 minutes. So what I suggest is that after the 20 breaths, you let yourself be with your eyes closed. You don't need to be totally still. You can, you can move around and stretch. Just you could say, don't worry about what to do or not do, but give yourself space, give yourself a moment, And I'll speak after about a minute, so you don't need to worry about the time as well. Okay. Remember to take that initial stretch or deep breath before you move into the 20 connected breaths. Okay, it's been about a minute since we started the 20 connected breaths. Any questions or anything that you notice with the practice?
I mean, it definitely for me was kind of like, in a sense, reinvigorating, but then also relaxing at the same time. Um, and then I think for Burkel, she ended up getting kind of that lightheaded, and so she got into it was just a different energy for her, but probably because we're holding the space together.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I like it. Invigorating, I think is a good word, but also clear, like clarity, just really clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love the you both touched on key points. There can be this combination of a sense of being energized and also relaxed. And the clarity, the sense like maybe the mind is cleared and the space is opened up in the mind. There's the busyness that was there, the activity that was there, it's just replaced with a sense of space and presence. And so, like I was saying, it can be the challenge can be just remembering. We have this tool that we can use in a minute. I said it was a 3-minute practice because if you give it a couple more minutes, you can kind of settle more into that spaciousness and the sort of restfulness. But even just a minute, you already feel the effects of the practice. But the big challenge is remembering that you have this tool. If it isn't made into a habit, it can be easy to overlook when we're stressed. I think that the mind has this, you could say this, the subconscious has this mechanism where we measure, we balance. If I'm feeling very stressed, then I must need a very challenging solution to get out of this situation. Like there's this sort of equivalence that we figure out. And so if we're feeling very stressed, we're never going to think of a 1-minute practice in order to feel better. We'll just be obsessing about some big problem that may or may not be actually the real reason we're stressed, but that's what we're going to focus on, some big problem. And this isn't a way to run away from problems, right? The clarity that can come after the practice It can enable us to look at what we actually need to do with much more clarity, you know. So it's not a way to postpone or avoid real problems, but to actually access the full range of resources we have by accessing clarity. And, you know, when there isn't really a problem that is present and just the effect of accumulated tension, to also have that discernment, you know, to sometimes let problems just kind of drop away because we've kind of invented them to make sense of the stress we're carrying with us. So, should we do the practice once more? And this time we'll give it the full 3 minutes. And if any questions come up, then we can address those as well. Ready? Okay. Okay. So that's been about 3 minutes. Would you like to share what the practice brought this time? Even if it's the same sensations, the same result.
It was a little different that time around. For me, it was kind of shifted an awareness of some sensations in my body. That makes sense. There was still similar, and then as I sat for that time, then some sensations started to come to my awareness.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
I would say the same thing. I was gonna say like clarity and like more spacey feeling, and then like the awareness and like hyphen of the senses. Just being still, I guess, with the feelings.
Okay, thank you for sharing. One thing that can happen also is, and it relates to what you've shared. Sometimes it's stillness and spaciousness, and sometimes it's we might notice the agitation in our energy. We might, instead of just feeling calm after the practice, we might notice that we're not calm. We might notice that there is agitation, and that can be a step in the right direction, you could say, from a place where the mind was tense, right? And we were perhaps even obsessing around some situation or problem, to go from that, let's say, mental obsessing into noticing, oh, I'm actually, I'm agitated, which is kind of obvious, right? If we're obsessing about something, it's obvious we're agitated, but we might not notice, and the noticing of it can be freeing. So it's not that we're totally calm, but just in the shift from the mental to the energetic, the physical, there is some degree of freeing from the attachment to how we were looking at things. There's some space that's opened up for us to be able to take a new perspective. And there are circumstances where if we're quite tense, it could be useful to repeat the 20 connected breaths 2 or 3 times. We might feel that it's helped, but that we could relax further. And so we can do it again, and not necessarily waiting the 3 minutes each time. You might do the 20 breaths and then feel like, okay, it's good, but I'll do it again, and repeat it 2 or 3 times if there's more tension, and then give that extra 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes more or less to integrate after, to settle more.
I'll say, one of the things I think of just, doing that again is where, like, as a counselor, doing some of the cognitive behavior therapy stuff that we might talk about or do, or working with individuals, and just sharing that difference between mindfulness and then relaxation skills. And that aspect of that mindfulness is that being able to sit with as opposed to avoid, where either of them could serve either purpose, but it's when that intention is there to build that capacity to be able to sit with some of maybe that uncomfortableness. But like you said, to notice that shift. It is a shift, it's a difference, and where it's not the intensity that maybe it was before. And so even that sense of that exposure of not avoiding, not running from,
Yeah.
because no matter where we go, there we are, right? And so it's just in that space of, so that's just what kind of really came to mind, and thinking about in the work that I do, or Eula does potentially, and just in general.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that's a really important thing, and it relates to what I was saying before as well. The energy of the smile, the positive thinking. It's not to override what's there, but to create space. And here as well, I described that if there's more stress, more tension, we could repeat it, and it's not just to, let's say, push away the tension. And there are times when we don't necessarily know, like, how real is the thing I'm stressing about? You know, when we're stressing about it, it feels like the most real thing and the only thing. And it's not about distracting ourselves, you know, and postponing things that need to be solved and addressed. But when we create a moment's peace, if it's not coming from a desire to avoid, but a willingness to see and to take an empowered, responsible engagement with life, right? Then this practice will help us to see with more clarity and more discernment, and we'll be able to access our resources to address whatever's there. So in some cases we might feel like, oh, the thing that I was so worried about, it's not really such a big deal, or it's not the real issue. The real issue is this other thing. And in some cases it might just feel like, I was just carrying stress. I've just been carrying stress, and now I feel lighter, and it's, you know, maybe this thing that I thought was a big problem is something that I can just go and say, look, you know, if there's been a tension with someone, you know, I'm sorry. I think I've, you know, I might have put too much into this. So there's all sorts of different scenarios in which we will respond differently as a result of the practice. And sometimes we'll find ourselves also stronger and able to take a stand on something that we were unable to before, because we feel like like I was saying, you know, we've accessed our resources, and the fact that we feel a little less overwhelmed can mean that we can engage with resources that perhaps we don't normally even have. Going back to the conversation earlier, you know, about the conditioning and the habitual patterns, we may sometimes habitually not access some of our potential. So clearing the space for a moment can allow ourselves to draw from places that we normally don't draw from, and access new responses to life. So I hope you'll experiment with this and play with this, and think of it not as a burden that, you know, I'm suggesting 5 practices a day, but as something to play with and explore and see what it brings. There's a Zen proverb, you may have heard one or other version of it, where a Zen master is asked how long you should meditate for, something like this, and, you know, and he says, well, half an hour a day will do. And the person says, what if I don't have half an hour a day? I'm too busy. He says, well, then an hour a day. And you can think of this like similarly. If you feel like it's just, you know, too much is happening, I can't fit it in, then, you know, fit it in more, more often, because you need to counteract that sense of overwhelm. You know, if that's what you're feeling, the sense of like, it's just my life, it's just too much, you really need it, you know, fit it in, but, you know, interrupt those moments there where you're accumulating stress, accumulating that tension, and you're telling yourself that it's too much. Interrupt those narratives, let's say, and inject those moments of clarity in there, those breaks and those moments of clarity, those moments of empowerment. And those moments, you know, to use another word for it, that was that key, that where you can access a sense of safety again, a sense of, you know, coming back to a sense of groundedness and presence that feels like, oh yeah, I'm here, and I'm not actually in an immediate threat right now, and that's an important place to come back to. when you become familiar with the practice, you can experiment doing it when there are people around and just doing it kind of really quietly, because you can do it intensely. And when I was trying to demonstrate it and trying to get you to hear my breath, I was kind of doing it with an intentional intensity so that my breathing would be audible. I don't know if you could hear me or not, because sometimes Zoom filters out background noise and it might have filtered out my breath. But you can also do it super quietly with a very gentle breath. You just get still the differentiation between the faster breathing and the deeper breath, but it can be very light. You could quite easily do it sitting at a dinner table when there's like with family and people are arguing, or in a business meeting, whatever. You could very, very subtly do the practice. You don't have to close your eyes. And you know, you may not be able to give yourself those 2.5 minutes of just total restfulness, but you can still get some benefit from the practice, you know, in these moments of tension, even if you're quite busy. And if you're trying to establish a new habit, if you want to do this and find a way to remember, of course, like I said, one way is just to set an alarm, but another is to associate the practice with a specific activity that you always do. So an easy one is the moment you get up, you know, the moment you wake up, the moment you go to bed, these moments that, because you do that every day, and if you associate it with that moment, it's easy to remember. Associating it with a specific time is not always as easy, unless there's an activity associated with that time already. So yeah, associating the practice with an activity, like if you always get in the car to go somewhere in the morning, whether it's like to go to work or something, you could maybe before you start the car, when you sit there, you could do the practice, and after you've done the practice, then drive off, you know, or when you arrive at the place, before you get out of the car, do the practice. There are these moments that you can ritualize, associating the practice with an activity you already have. It's already a pattern in your life. Okay.
I'm gonna jump in here for a minute and just check in and see if there are any outstanding questions from anyone. I don't know if Peter has anything else planned for today. I know we had kind of said that this would be around the time where the offering will end, but it's definitely open. I'm happy to keep it going for sure. So totally up to you, Peter.
Yeah, I think maybe one thing I would say, because I've indirectly addressed the theme, right? We had this titled integration after awakening, and so it may not be immediately obvious how is this related to the title that we gave, right? But awakening often involves like the imagery of let's say mud at the bottom of a glass, you know. So it's it can, the water can seem clear, but there's mud at the bottom. But then when you start like moving the water, then it suddenly becomes all, you know, you can't see through the water anymore. It's as if it's become dirty. And that's how it can feel sometimes. A spiritual awakening can be in the moment, wonderful, blissful, clarity, transformation, and then it can feel like quite a lot of mess that we're facing, and it can be quite frustrating, going, you know, that contrast of the perhaps divine communion and clarity and liberation, and then as if we've gone backwards into karmic patterns and, you know, all this stuff. But the principles that we've talked about today, and the why behind the practice, you know, that we did earlier, the grace flow practice, there are ways in which we can simply make space for what comes up, whether it's old stuff from childhood, whether it's the day-to-day tension we're accumulating. We need even just the simplest tools like creating time, creating space in order to integrate. Ultimately, it's the simple things that we've been talking about, you know, creating space, feeling safe enough, because day to day, that's what's going to bring us more peace and ability to do what we need to do. And also, rather than just the doing and the achieving day to day, it's what's going to create the possibility for energy to flow freely, for this inner divine knowingness to express itself, our potential to unfold.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peter. I'd like to offer some words too about like relating to what you said today to our practices yesterday. And because we did do a bunch of things yesterday. You were talking about how we're trained to be in this fight or flight, but there's also an aspect of life where things happen, you know, things that are traumatic that happen. And that can put us in fight or flight, not necessarily because we're trained like that, but just because life is happening.
Yeah.
And so that's what we label as trauma. And part of what we did yesterday was we addressed it very lightly, and that's because I want to go deeper at the retreat into the trauma. And we just accessed it very lightly as part of the shadow work that we did. So I feel like that's the tools that Peter has been offering are more within the resource that we spoke of. These are resources. And remember, we said resourcing is the tool to put you in that safe space. Because we also said that when we're traumatized, it's really hard to trust and to have faith. And these tools are resources that put us into that space. So there's like your tie in a little bit. Hopefully it kind of makes more sense this way. And also Peter mentioned the smile. So that in itself could be the resource. Of course, the breath too, that we were just practicing. It's very different than the breath I offered yesterday. Mine is like more going into like the nasty stuff, right? And Peter's is like so nice and like relaxing and more integrational, you can say. But they're all powerful tools and they're all necessary, like we talked in the beginning. Everything holding both the dark and the light together, Shiva and Shakti. So yeah, I just wanted to tie it into yesterday just so that people could get a sense of what you offer and what I offer.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, and we'll open it for questions or anything. And I do want to offer doing a little bit more of what we did yesterday, like the trauma release as the closing part of the whole retreat online. So hopefully people can stay on for that. But I'll leave the floor now for questions and perhaps a little bit more with Peter. And Peter, you can let us know when you have to go.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's quite late here, but I can stay on a little longer.
I mean, I'll just share just in case you do need to leave while we're doing some of the other stuff. Just appreciate again you bringing that into the mix and just deepening, some of that thought and understanding. So just that appreciation there. And so thank you for taking that time today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Happy to connect with you and to be with you. I was going to say this evening. For you, it's not evening.
It's early evening.
Right. Okay.
It's fun. We're all on different time zones because
Yeah.
everybody's in Michigan and I'm in California and you're in Portugal.
Okay.
Thank you,
Is
Peter.
Michigan, in what is it? Eastern time zone? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. This really you provided a lot of valuable information. Definitely gave me a deeper understanding.
Great. Great. Thank you. Great.
And I just want to give that feedback for both of you. I can feel your energy, and I can't thank you enough for that as well. Like that connectedness. Like thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Susie.
Of course, always a pleasure. It's been really nice to have everyone here, and of course, I'm always grateful to Peter and for following through and being here and sharing his wisdom. And hopefully, more in Italy, we can go deeper. And as Peter mentioned, it'll become a new pattern, hopefully, for everyone. But also, there's a lot of learning and things that you can offer your clients as well. So it's a cycle. We learn and we share.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very grateful to have been with you today. I think I will leave now and I'll watch the recording later because I'd love to catch up with what you've shared, Susie. And I also want to thank you all for adapting to the shift in the schedule. It was going to be Susie and I together yesterday, interspersing our activities. And so I want to thank you all for adapting to how it turned out, especially you, Susie. Thank you.
Absolutely. Life happens and we just roll with it. I'm just glad we were able to still have it.
Yeah.
This was great. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.
If you want to stay on for the next portion, it's just going to be the closing circle, but I just thought I'd offer going back because what we did yesterday was everybody chose an area that they wanted to focus on integrating within their life, and we kind of like went through that and felt it within the body.
Mhm.
And everybody pinpointed what it is that they wanted to work on, like what was most pressing in their life right now. And so perhaps we can go back to that right now and like locate that and see if there's anything that has shifted already from yesterday till today. And that's a possibility, especially after all the sharings that we've offered and you've had some hours to sit with it, maybe not consciously, but it's in the subconscious, like things are happening there, right? When we bring some light to the shadow, it has nowhere to go but to unfold, to be seen. And once it's seen, then it's no longer shadow, right? So if you want to, you're welcome to begin to settle down and just recall that aspect or that emotion or that pain that you were working with. Um, and just locate that within the body. And taking some deep, deep breaths here. So inhaling deeply from the nose, exhaling from the mouth, and just settling into your seat. Couple more deep breaths this way. And then just bringing to mind whatever it is that you wish to address. Or if you want to locate it within the body, which is where we're starting. We started with the physical body. So most of us will locate that pain or emotion or sensation. And it's not going to be a joyful sensation. We're looking for some pain here. And just bring all of your attention to it. And as we did yesterday, just holding and embracing it. And thanking it. And perhaps asking it for what the gift is that it's trying to offer. Especially if you have not received any answers yet, perhaps today, perhaps now, perhaps in the future, the answers will come. And I'd like you to envision a white, bright light surrounding this pain. Make it the deepest, brightest white color, or it could also be a golden color if you prefer, surrounding this pain. And we'll just begin to breathe deeply into it. And as you breathe in this way, inhaling and exhaling, again, using the entire capacity of your lungs, you will begin to notice how this pain is actually dissolving with every exhale that you take. So deep inhales, and the light becomes brighter. And then as you exhale, this pain begins to dissolve. And keep breathing in this way, inhaling and exhaling. With every exhale, it's almost as if this pain is just becoming dust, or maybe fairy dust. It's like sparkling dust, and just kind of releasing. And just keep it up for the next couple of minutes here, visualizing that pain releasing. And as you do this, I want you to acknowledge subconsciously that your identity is different than this pain. You are not this pain. I want you to also acknowledge that your identity is different from what you think has caused this pain. I want you to acknowledge that your identity is different than anyone who might be related to this pain. So keep that breath, keep acknowledging the difference between you and this pain, and keep visualizing it dissolving and releasing. We'll keep this up, keep that in mind, keep the vision. If it's hard to see the imagery, just feel the sensations of becoming lighter as this pain is releasing. Also acknowledging that you are in this moment now, and whatever events have led you to this pain no longer apply in your life right now. Acknowledging that moving forward from this moment on, the message of this pain has been received, and it neutralizes it once you receive that message. It no longer holds as truth. So deep breaths, make those final breaths as deep as possible. Exhaling, releasing. And we'll just sit in silence for a couple of minutes. This is usually the space where if I was working one-on-one, I'll go in and do energetic work, and I will work with each individual just for a minute. So I know it's not a big group, so I can handle it right now. So bear with me, just staying in your place, staying as calm and relaxed as possible, allowing for the release. So the allowing that we spoke of, allowing that space, allowing the safety. And then slowly, on your own time, slowly making it back into your body. And taking your time to open your eyes and come back into the room that you're in. And this will be our closing circle, basically. Keeping it nice and light and tiny for now. And feedback is welcome. Anything that you'd wish to comment or ask. Again, the floor is open for the next few minutes. Feel free. Otherwise, we will close it out. I'd love to hear from anyone.
Yeah, just thank you for holding the space, both of you, all of us, I guess, right? Because it took all of us to do that. And so just appreciated that safe space for that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Excited for Italy. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Peter. Would you have any last words that you'd like to share?
For me, just also looking forward to seeing you in Italy, and beautiful to be with you today. And the deepening of this will be will be beautiful.
Absolutely. I think we're on to something. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everyone. And make sure you drink a lot of water.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Susie.